Welcome to yet another episode of ET Edge Insights, and I am Aritra Ghosh. We are at the very edge of transformation where three of the most disruptive forces in technology, AI, 5G, and cloud, are but converging realities. And at the center of this convergence is Ciena, an innovation first company that has consistently reimagined the future of networks. Steering that vision in India and South Asia is Mr. Amit Malik, key driver of Ciena's long term strategy. In this conversation, we unpack how Ciena is building intelligent, secure, and scalable networks in an era of hyperconnectivity. Welcome, Mr. Malik. Thank you for taking out so much time for us.
Pleasure.
So, I would like to ask, the telecom industry currently is sitting at a very important inflection point. How do you see the convergence of AI, 5G, and cloud services reshaping the core architecture and economics of business?
Very interesting point. Actually, I think we live in very interesting times because there's so much happening, and the good part is there are multiple parallel revolutions happening. Right now, you said you used words like AI, you used 5G, there is robotics, there is the industry 4.0, multiple things happening. But what does it mean is actually this is actually converging because there is an underlying fabric which is responsible for driving all of this. And underlying fabric is the network. That is where we come in, fortunately. Yeah. We've been struggling for a while to find 5G use cases, for example. The whole industry has been thinking what could be the next big thing, right? Fortunately, they found one monetization in fixed wireless access to some extent, right? But what's happening with AI is today, I think AI is fueling 5G and 5G is fueling AI. In the sense, to run AI, you need networks to be really fast, right? And that's where 5G comes in. And the AI use cases will further fuel the 5G monetization as well. So that's one part of the inflection. But what is really happening on data is something which is very important to note. If you see today, data is expanding at a very, very fast pace. We've all been using things like ChatGPT, for example. There's so many interesting data points. They said to have 1 million users in ChatGPT, it took them probably days, right? Whereas for iPhone adoption, it took them 2.5 years, for example, right? On the other hand, we look at all the hyperscalers, the kind of money that they're spending on building the scale of data centers. The capex is growing at over 60% year on year. Today, the revenue of hyperscalers, if I were to talk about, is upwards of $300 billion. Now, these are all data points. I'm trying to build that story on where it converges. Now, closer to home, if we see, the data center is again exploding. And why is the data center exploding? Because data is exploding, right? Depending upon who we listen to, people will give you numbers like by 2030, data centers will go 2x, 4x, 10x, right? Everybody's got their own view. Nobody's got a crystal ball, though. But general consensus will be around 4x. Now, what that is doing today is, with that kind of expansion today, that's putting a huge stress on the network. How do you build a network that can scale overnight, right? How do you build for such data increase? And right now, again, depending upon which service provider you speak to, some will say our capacity is going to go 4x by 2 years. Some will say 4x by 3 years, right? But again, nobody has a crystal ball because the impact of AI is still to be seen. So coming back to your point on how do I see the convergence, I see that as a very interesting time. I see that a time where the dynamics around the network and the infrastructure is changing very, very fast. I see a time where the networks that we build for tomorrow have to be thought of very, very fast. Because the pace at which we used to build networks, that is not the pace which we'll see in coming years. We will see the pace getting much more faster. It will be a lot about speed, it will be about scalability, and it's also going to be about sustainability.
Perfect. And Ciena has long been viewed as a tech forward company. How is your team rethinking network infrastructure to embed AI, 5G, and cloud services while keeping, the security uncompromised?
Again, a good question, very good question, actually, because I think with all these changes in technology, security becomes paramount. And while security becomes paramount, it's also a lot about automation, as we see. because what you're saying, how are you at the forefront of technology? So let me first define how we are at the forefront of technology. If you remember, I mean, if you just heard what I said earlier, I spoke about unprecedented growth in data. Now, that means today the networks that you build have to be built for a much higher scale. Today, Ciena is the only organization in the world which has got a current modem delivering 1.6 terabits per second. And this is by far the fastest across the globe. This in isolation seems very great because, yes, you address the speed problem. I mentioned another S, which was sustainability. Now, this whole thing also, this offer, this modem of ours, while delivering such high speeds, also consumes half the space and half the power of the predecessor. That's what adds to sustainability. Because today, for every organization, besides the security of the network, the scale of the network, the speed of the network, and the sustainability matters. You don't have unlimited power. You can keep building data centers. Every time the data center is built up, you need more and more power. You have to build networks which consume much lesser power than their predecessors, yes, delivering twice as much. Security is going to become an even more complex thing with the advent of yet another animal, which is called quantum computing, right? So we are again ahead of the curve when we talk about quantum encryption, about offering security for that kind of environment. And security is very deeply embedded in all our solutions. And the other thing that's embedded is also AI and agentic AI. Anything and everything that we do today, AI is a very strong element of our solutions.
Perfect. And you've played a pivotal role in Ciena's South Asia strategy. What has been your leadership focus while building this convergence internally across your teams as well as externally with your customers?
Wow. Pivotal, I don't know, but leadership, I can share some bit of it. And I think my mantra in life has always been, and whether it is about customers or internal teams, it's always about building trust. And you build trust when you honestly have people's interest in your heart. Whether it is your customer or whether it is your employees, your teams, you have to have their interest in your mind. And I mean, I was jokingly mentioning to my team the other day that I'm actually going to be writing a book, and the title is People See People, which is a fact because people actually, I mean, when you start off your career very early, you think you can outsmart systems. But as you go through that learning curve, you realize that actually people see through you. And that is why your customers will see through you, and you have to be honest with your customers. So that they can trust you. But just trusting is not enough. They also have to trust what you bring to them, what value you bring to them. And we are very fortunate that we work for an organization which is by far a leader in terms of technology and innovation. So what we bring to our customers is a significant amount of value add. And same is the case with our own employees, where it's a matter of pride for them to be working for an organization like Ciena.
Perfect. And looking ahead, which technologies or consumer use cases do you believe will most dramatically affect the next wave of telecom industry?
Wow. Now you want me to get my crystal ball out. Yeah, I have to do crystal ball gazing. Rather than talking about use cases, I'd said three S's that I spoke about. That is going to be very, very important going forward. Speed, scalability, and simplicity. Sorry. Speed and scalability, sustainability, and simplicity. These three S's will rule everything around the customer use cases that you're talking about. And the last word actually seems like a very simplistic word. Simplicity. What do you really mean by that? When I mean simplicity is today our networks are super complex. And how do you simplify that? You simplify that by automating. And now with the advent of AI, that's revolutionizing everything. One very important area, which is probably getting impacted most in service providers, is just the idea of customer support. And not only telecom, it's across multiple organizations. And we all know customer support defines customer behavior, right? You and me, when we use any technology, if we are not happy with the service of a service provider, we would like to change them. And that is what AI is enabling today. And from a Ciena perspective today, as I said, we have a lot of software suites for our customers. We have got a navigator, which not only, and our Blue Planet software solutions, which not only help you in ensuring that you deliver better to your customers, It also ensures that you have maintain predictive insights into your network, which helps you getting insights much before things actually happen, or even if they happen, it automatically ensures that they are remedied, right?
Perfect. And if you had to leave the telecom leaders with one piece of strategic advice as they prepare for the next 5 years, what would that be?
I'll fall back on the three S's again, but this time I'll talk about more about the speed and scale. See, because the dilemma today of every leader in the telecom industry is how do you build for tomorrow? And you can't build for tomorrow looking at the past. Because if you see, typically your traffic was probably growing at about 20, 25, maybe 30% year on year. But today, the situation is going to be so much more different because there's so many new impetus which are going to impact the growth of traffic. If you were to pick up again certain reports, some would say that the traffic will grow like a hockey stick post 27, some say 28. But everybody is convinced that at some point, that hockey stick curve impact is going to happen. Now, it's very difficult for you to take that bet also, but it's important to take that bet because infrastructures cannot be built overnight. Look at what the hyperscalers are doing. Why are they spending so much money? They are building for tomorrow. And I think the same thing will happen with the telecom service provider leaders who will have to start looking at tomorrow and use the three S's: build speed, scalability, sustainability, and simplicity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us a broader perspective on how the leaders need to think, act, and invest differently moving ahead.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.